Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from Behind Enemy Lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my co-host, Fox Trevize. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Doing well. Sorry I missed you guys last week. I have lots of excuses, valid reasons, invalid reasons, just reasons. But I'm back. That's what's important, and hopefully for a long time.
Well, he did have lots of valid reasons. The specific reason he had, if he had to choose one, it would be one of the invalid reasons.
Of course, because they're more fun to explain.
Yes.
So, as always, we have a great show for you. See, why do we have in the script a lie right there? You're forcing me to lie. We'll have a decent show for you.
No. The better question is, why does the link for the funny Kamala Harris word salad, why is the link for that just a link back to the show notes? What did you do? I was trying to get it set up. Typically, like when we have links and stuff, like, we got them in the show notes, and like I'll prepare them ahead of time before we get to them. And the link that Dyer gave me for Kamala Harris saying something stupid was just a link back to the show notes. What's wrong with you?
Well, see if I can pull it up for you while I'm also talking. Yeah,
that's your fault.
So thank you for making the show possible. Everyone who donates to us financially, you know who you are. This is your fault. Thank you very much for Kaylet, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thunderican, The White Lion, Timberwolf, Adder Lupus, White Wolf, all you wolves out there. But you can also, if you can't donate to us financially, you can help us out by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please follow us on Rumble, because our time with YouTube is limited, because I believe they're going to be kicking us off at some point. Because we're not going to be censoring ourselves. I did not find that video, but I'm fine with looking for it and showing it later on in the show. Let's move on to our first story.
Yeah, you can help us by finding that link for Dyer. All right, well, it was a joke, but now it is obviously for real. Dire Wolf of Dire Wolf Media has been fired. He joins a long list of other TV hosts that were fired this week, including Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson. Tucker, very shockingly, it actually was shocking. I guess people thought that it wasn't shocking, but I thought it was shocking. That Tucker, Fox News' top personality, their top ranking and the ratings and all that stuff, their top personality, Tucker Carlson, was fired unceremoniously on Monday. Tucker even went so far as to show up on Monday, and he was doing show prep during the day for what was going to be his Monday night show, and they fired him that afternoon while he was prepping for his show. Tucker's Friday show the week before, he had even said, I'll see you on Monday, proving that he had no idea that this was coming. They announced, Fox News announced his firing in a written statement on Monday. And they didn't even give him one last show to discuss his firing, showing that he was blindsided. The decision, let's see here. So basically, after they fired him, they gave Brian Gilmy his spot for last week, and they are planning on having a show titled Fox News Tonight during that time slot. And the initial ratings dump was that Tucker, who had typically about 3.5 million views, I believe Kilme was pulling in under 1 million views. So the ratings hit was rather substantial.
Yeah, I mean, I believe they were even beaten by some of the other networks, which has been unheard of for a while.
Yeah, they were Tucker, who was pulling in the top slot of all the networks at that time spot. now
by a lot.
Yeah, by a lot. Now they were being beat out by basically everybody.
Yeah. So a common theory was that he had been fired due to the Fox Dominion lawsuit, which recently resulted in Fox News settling out of court, paying $787.7 million to Dominion for defamation. So Dominion had argued that the host and guest on Fox News had stated without evidence that they had changed votes and stolen the election, that the machines were corrupt. They were changing votes. And the funny thing about this, because that was bad for the network, but pinning that on Tucker is funny, because Tucker actually multiple times had called out his own guests who were making those claims and saying, cool story, show me the evidence. How do we know what you're saying is true?
And really, I would say Tucker helped influence our content when right after the election, everybody was saying it was rigged. Everybody was saying the Dominion voter machines were changing the votes. That's what everybody was saying. And I would have loved for us to say that too. It was a fun, exciting thing to talk about. We certainly would have gotten a lot of views, as a lot of people did during that time, shouting the Dominion voting machines changed the votes. But there wasn't evidence for it. And I really wanted there to be evidence for it, because it would have helped make things make sense. But there wasn't good evidence for it. There was a lot of circumstantial coincidences, and there was a lot of people who said that they had hard evidence. And that's why I wanted there to be evidence, because so many people were saying that they had hard evidence. And Tucker had some of these people on his show who claimed they had hard evidence, and they never produced it. And it's really sad, because they led so many people on our side of the fence astray, chasing down these things that never were, when they claimed that they had evidence. And all they did was generate lots and lots of views. During that time, they changed the focus so dramatically that we lost the Senate runoff race in Georgia. And Tucker called a lot of those people out. You guys spent so much time saying you had hard evidence. Where is it? And they were never able to produce it. And Tucker's kind of pushback on what was a very popular narrative helped give Dyer and I the confidence to also not be, pushing that on our show when we didn't have the evidence to do so.
Right. Now, Tucker talked about actual cases of election fraud that happened with that actual evidence where there was, and also talking about the gamesmanship where it wasn't illegal, but that necessarily that the state legislators had passed new rules that they shouldn't have been able to, but those were the rules during the election that had benefited the Democrats as far as mail-in voting. So we talked about the real election influencing without having to talk about something that wasn't real and had no evidence. I don't think you needed to have the Dominion voting machines changing people's votes for them to have a corrupt election.
Yeah, but you get what is it, Sidney Powell, and I think I may have got her first name wrong, but and then you had the Mike Lindau, the Pillow guy, and a bunch of other people who claimed they had evidence of the machines changing the votes, and it distracted us from real tangible things that could have been done to help fix the election. You still have Trump today. His current campaign for 2024, he still has people like Mike Lindau at his events talking about these things. He still doesn't have, the Pillow guy still does not have evidence, but he's claiming that he did. And Trump's still working on that, to the exclusion where we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We missed in Wisconsin getting the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court position, a state Supreme Court who's going to be making decisions about voting laws in a very purple state, a very important purple state. And that was once again missed. We missed out on something like 1.5 million Trump votes. people who voted for Trump in 2020 who did not come out in 2023 to vote for the state Supreme Court position. Because they're all distracted listening to Trump talk about, the laws don't matter. It's the voting machines change the votes, and don't worry about voting. Don't worry about the laws. Don't worry about any of that stuff. It's just get views on talking about conspiracy theories about Dominion voting.
All right. So in any case, the narrative that Tucker was fired because of the Dominion case is bunk, because he was not supporting that narrative. Also, another accusation was the reason why he was fired was possibly because there was a female producer who worked in the in booking. So not directly with shooting the show, but booking guests for the show. She recently had been hired on in 2022. And she was accusing, she has 2 lawsuits against Fox News for a hostile work environment, which was based off of her accusing the producers of Tucker's show of using vulgar language and anti-Semitic jokes. She's not accusing Tucker of having done either of those things, even though the news stories about this are heavily implying that she's accusing him of things, but she's not. The lawsuits are about the producers on his show, which she worked with, not Tucker. And her own lawyer says she's never met Tucker. And yet, she is, going around the left-wing news saying that he encouraged a hostile work environment when she never interacted with him. So that's also bunk. That's not there's no legitimate reason.
She must really not like the sexy green M&M.
That's got to be it, yeah.
That's probably it.
So those are 2 of the, unfortunately, leading theories of why he was
the 2 leading
fired.
theories both don't make sense. But the third leading theory that absolutely takes the cake for being the stupidest theory. We won't talk about the people who are talking about this theory, but if you hear somebody propagating this theory, you can immediately know that they're dumb. And that theory is that Tucker tried to create a situation where Fox was forced to fire him in a 3D, 8D chess move so that Tucker was then free to run as Trump's vice president. Some people have actually been saying that that'll be Tucker's next move. And I'm saying that if Tucker comes out as joining the Trump ticket as the Trump Tucker ticket, I will buy a webcam and I will live stream my real self eating my shorts.
Yes,
we will do that.
That's not going to happen. Now, yes. Tucker actually doesn't like Trump, and there has been text messages that were released during the lawsuit showing that he doesn't like Trump quite a lot. And also, it doesn't make sense because clearly this was he was blindsided on this. But we have a statement from Tucker himself.
Yes, we do. And here it is.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people, people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are.
I concur with that.
Absolutely.
Again, that's a constant struggle that we have when we're prepping stories for the show. Is there's what is everybody talking about, and then there's what is important, and typically those do not. There's not a large.
They don't line up.
If you were to construct a Venn diagram of things that people were talking about and things that are important, there's not a lot of overlap.
Honestly, there's a bunch of stories of things that are really important right now in the news that we've already talked about that are just like getting worse, but we can't. Like, there's nothing new in the news.
Yeah, the thing that's new is that people suddenly realized it after Dyer and I had already covered it. Because we're usually leading that charge.
Yes.
They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
All right. See you soon there. He has some kind of plan to... Tucker's a cat. He'll land on his feet there.
I'm fairly sure he's going to be doing his own media company. I doubt he's going to join with another company because he's such a big name. He's probably going to do his own thing. He might, though. Blaze was like, I wish we had enough money to pay him. We would, but they don't.
Yeah. Really, what's interesting is that the most lucrative thing that could possibly happen to Tucker is that he gets fired.
Yeah. Actually.
Now there is some speculation as to what's left on his contract. Presumably Fox News had him in a pretty tight contract for if you leave or for whatever reason, we would like you to not, take away all of our audience, is probably something along the lines of what the contract says. That probably involves some kind of stipulation that he's not allowed to do certain things for a certain amount of time. He's probably not allowed to talk about certain things for a certain amount of time. However, that's a piece of paper. That doesn't necessarily mean that Tucker will be bound to that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that paper is binding if you have the right lawyers looking at it and the right judge deciding on that. We'll see where Tucker ends up at. A lot of people
possible they didn't fire him in the correct way as well, following the terms of that agreement.
Correct,
because it was very abrupt, and if they in any way violated that contract, then the rest of it's void as well.
Yeah, there was some concern that I think not reasonable concern that Tucker might just be out for like 5 or 10 years due to how standard contracts work. There's no way Tucker's going to be silent. I would be shocked if by the end of let's say June, if by the end of June Tucker doesn't have like a new permanent home. I would be surprised if he doesn't.
So I have a feeling that this isn't not about Tucker doing anything wrong. I don't think it has anything to do with the financials of Fox News, because obviously losing him is the dumbest thing financially they could do. I think it has a lot more to do with the Democrat machine, political machine, headhunting the top influential members of the Conservative Party.
Well, that might be true. Somebody who kind of throws off that trend would be another person who got fired this week, which was Don Lemon, who is neither big nor influential, though he does have a head.
He does. But I meant, like, they went after Project Veritas's James O'Keefe, right? Just got him removed from his company. And then they're removing Tucker Carlson for equally absurd reasons. That was the dogs, yes.
Dyer has a dog rodeo going on in his house.
Okay, let's talk about Don Lemon.
Don Lemon was fired. Not really reason to speculate why. Maybe which reason. For Tucker,
to choose from.
Yeah, for Tucker, you gotta really sit down and think and be creative to figure out why on earth would Fox fire him. For Don, it's really a matter of, well, which thing was finally the last straw.
He actually did a sexual assault.
Yes. there's a lot of possibilities as to what was the reason why Don got fired. There's a lot of agreement that the clip I'm about to play was definitely the last straw for Don Lemon. This was Don last week interviewing Vivek Ramaswamy, who is, I don't know why he's running. He's running for name recognition, probably so he can sell a book and promote his brand. I guess he's like a business person. I don't know. I've never heard of him before he started running, which is probably why, again, he started running. However, I will refrain from further making fun of him for running as a no-name because of the intense benefit of what he has just done by running. Similar to how Tulsi Gabbard, she was never going to win, but in running, she was able to just gut Kamala Harris on stage. Vivek had a similar moment with Don Lemon here last week.
We should have this debate
without me regarding you as a black man,
but me regarding you as a fellow citizen.
That's what I think we should say. Whatever ethnicity you are explaining to me,
whatever ethnicity I'm,
what it's like to be black.
Whatever ethnicity I'm, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
The content of the ideas.
If you're going to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? We appreciate you coming on.
With due respect, Don, I look forward to continuing that conversation. Thank you.
Whatever ethnicity you are explaining. I like how he's such an NPC. Everything has to be about race, right? So he has this like pre-scripted NPC line that he's going to say, and the NPC line has like a fill in the blank for race because everything has to be race focused. And Don is such a slow and stupid NPC. He couldn't even fill in the blank. He just said the placeholder text, which is whatever ethnicity you are. And said, you could have said like white splaining or black splaining or Indian splaining, or which again, why you would say that term on a CNN show live on air is that's a little bit ridiculous, but he couldn't even get the line out. He left the placeholder text in there. Whatever ethnicity you are explaining. So that was, I believe that this was Don's final moment on air. From what I understand, this was either the final moment or very close to the final moment. And this seems to have been the clip that threw the CNN execs over the edge.
The final straw.
The final straw.
A very well loaded camel.
Yes. Very, very, very well loaded. So I like kind of the opposite of how Tucker getting fired is probably extremely lucrative for Tucker because everybody's just begging and tripping over themselves to find enough money to pay him. Don's future job prospects are quite the opposite, where he probably does not have as bright of a future after being fired as Tucker did. So where do you think where do you think Don ends up at?
Where do you think he lands after this fall from grace?
Probably into a black hole, I would imagine.
Probably, yeah, for a while, probably a black hole. I have a feeling he might end up in some like local news show or something like that. Because like, what mainstream media source is going to want to hire him after what they've seen his market value is?
Where did Brian Stelter end up at? Because he after he got fired, I think he's still doing something, but it's of such little notoriety. He's completely gone from the conversation. And Don Lemon, I believe, will end up in the exact same way, where he will attempt to do something and he'll just be so irrelevant to the conversation. Nobody will even talk about him, even to make fun of him. I
don't know where Brian Stelter is. Maybe we can find that out later.
Brian Stelter is lucky, though. I mean, he was immortalized into Steven Crowder's opening stinger, where he's the sun rising over the mug.
Yeah.
I guess that is the fate of Brian Stelter is he has been immortalized in the opening for Louder Crowder. Don Lemon not so lucky.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think any news show would benefit from having him. He has no like depth to his commentary. You're like say, he's NPC. He can't like dynamically debate with anyone, and he comes back to these NPC statements, and it doesn't make sense.
I can't remember who it was, but there was something on Twitter last week. It was somebody who owns a burger joint. I can't remember which one, but they had invited Don Lemon that they were looking for a new fry cook.
Hey, let's pull up that the clip from Kamala Harris because Triumvir's calling me out on it.
Okay. Well, first we do have a big announcement before the clip with Kamala Harris, and it's kind of related because even though you found it eventually, Dyer, I mean it was late again, and so we have a special announcement here at Direwolf Media, and that is Direwolf has also been fired. We at Direwolf Media have spent a very short amount of time considering this very important decision. But of the Direwolf Media employees that are left, mainly me, we think that this is financially the best decision that we could be making. We really wanted to capitalize.
Are you just firing me because whatever race I am?
Yes, whatever race you are explaining, yes, you're out. But it's viral to fire your top talent. So we're trying to cash in on that.
Well, shit, I didn't even know you could fire me.
I'm the CEO. So yes.
Fuck.
Yes.
This seems really unfair. Do I continue with the show?
No. Yes, it's part of your contract that you're fired, but you have to continue with the show. It's indentured servitude. Alrighty. Well, now that we fired Dyer, I'll let him continue on on a probationary basis. We'll see how it goes. But it's the last straw, Dyer. The last straw. All right. Here is the Kamala Harris clip that you found for us, and let's see what she has to say. I'm sure it'll be very profound and possibly about time and potentially have Venn diagrams in it.
How they our future and past.
Let's watch it. Oh no, it's quiet.
For us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future. I think it's very important, as you have heard.
It's very important to think about time and the passage of time as it relates to the past and to the future as it relates to the current present in which we exist.
She is worse at generating statements than an AI word generator.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. And I guess Joe Biden announced that he's running for president, which I think we probably should have done that as a segment.
Oops. Oh yeah.
We'll chalk that up to whoever made the initial show map.
Don't worry, they've been fired.
Yeah. Okay. Good. But yeah, Biden announced that he was running for president this week, and Kamala Harris is still on the ticket. So yeah. Wow. There was a lot of speculation about that. I did not see any route forward for which Joe could run but not have Kamala as his vice president, as a lot of people were speculating. And I didn't see how it was possible. There was just no way for Joe to run for a year and a half with a vice president.
Racist if he removed her.
What's that?
It's seen as sexist and racist from their side.
Well, how could she have continued on as vice president for like a year and a half while he's campaigning for another vice president? I mean, she would have had to resign immediately.
Doing now, I'm not actually doing her job.
Well, Triumvirate, if you consider the passage of words and the way that they relate to each other in the present and affect the future to describe the past, then I think you'll find that a dictionary will help you out.
But if Triumvirate, she's actually just so smart. She's fifth dimensionally smart that you just can't see the parts of her argument that exist outside of our dimension.
Yeah, so while it's stupid for Kamala to voice that thought, that's essentially the thought that a lot of commentators have been using to describe the current politic the last month or two, where everybody's spending such an inordinate amount of time speculating on things that are unlikely to happen. And that seems to be they're internalizing the concept of time, which Kamala Harris has brought to us. I like the Fox News Chiron, just straight up Harris talks in circles.
It's the same thing. It just changes the topic.
Is she talking in circles, or is she talking in Venn diagrams?
It's just two circles. Yeah, it's both. She's talking multiple circles.
Alrighty. Well, let's get on to our next
story. She's a black time wizard.
Oh, God.
She's the Indian time wizard. That they've adopted the technology.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to the next story.
Alrighty. So Florida man, he doing stuff. Got a lot of stuff. It's kind of a hodgepodge grab bag of stories from Florida that we have here. The first one is an interesting one. Mr. Ron DeSantis signed a new law into law with the passage of a law on Friday. Let's hear. So we have this from CNN, which this new law that he passed is pretty interesting. I called Dyer about it on Friday, and he was like, "Oh man, no way." So from CNN here, Florida lawmakers gave final passage on Friday to a measure that clears a path for Republican Governor Ron DeSantis to run for president without resigning from his current job. The provision, which was anticipated, would tweak a Florida law known as the Resign to Run law that currently requires a candidate in the state seeking higher office to give up their elected post once they qualify for the ballot.
But tell me you're not running for president.
Yeah, he's not running for, he hasn't announced, Dyer. He's just making a law that says that he's allowed to announce, okay? Come on, man. Let's see here. So the legislation approved on Friday exempts any person seeking office for president or vice president of the United States from a resign to run law. So it's not even, they didn't even change the whole resign to run law. It's just specifically if you're running for president. It's specifically only if you're running for president. The provision was tacked onto a sweeping election bill that passed the House in a 76-34 vote, sending it to DeSantis for his signature. The package had passed the Senate on Thursday with a 28-12, Republicans holding a supermajority in both chambers. So, that happened on Friday.
Other states don't have such a law or restriction where you can still be in office as governor and running for president. And Florida's like, well, I mean, we put this rule on ourselves, but now that DeSantis wants to run for president, we're gonna undo that law. How do you feel about that, Fox? Should they be changing the law, probably specifically for this situation, or does it matter?
The Democrats would do it, so I don't particularly mind if that is really up to the people of Florida. I can see the benefit to having a law that makes sure that your state officials are focusing on state issues and not just using the state as a springboard into federal politics. I understand the need for that. Like you mentioned, though, this is a restriction that is sort of unique to Florida, more so than in other states. And I don't know, times change. It's not like it wasn't It wasn't like a law that was founded in constitutionality one way or the other. The Constitution was silent on the law that this is, covering, or the thing that this is covering. So to have the law or to not have the law doesn't really matter. I would guess that I don't know the history of that law, but a lot of the times when there are laws like that on the books, if you look into the history of it, it was probably passed at one point in the past to try to prevent a governor from running for office, and now they're doing it in the opposite way. So that law existing is, I don't know. It was probably corrupt to begin with and probably corrupt in the end.
I think that law was initially passed by when they had a divided party between who was governor and who was in Congress, or in their legislature, I mean. And that the other party didn't want the governor running for president or for any other office.
Yeah.
They're trying to block it. So it was at that time a law passed to affect a single politician. That's my first impression. I'd have to look into it. I'm not really sure how I feel about it until I look into it more.
I guess, and you'd have to ask yourself, the Democrats would like to use the Insurrection Act to prevent Trump from being able to run for office. There's a lot of states who have laws similar to the Insurrection Act that would, if interpreted in a certain way, would prevent Trump from going on the ballot in those states. And so, I guess is it a fair law? Is it a different reason? Is there's some kind of difference here? I don't know. I will maintain that DeSantis is still not announced. He's certainly getting closer and closer to the edge.
Yeah, it seems like it's definitely telegraphing that he plans to announce. I would say that regardless, though, if DeSantis runs and wins, it's better for our country, and this may allow that to happen. I do understand, though, totally that if you have someone who was voted to be the governor, that you want them to actually be performing the duties of the governor and not go and running other elections.
Yeah, so I guess you'd have to make the case. Is he performing the duties? Trump's making the case that he's not. Which, I guess Trump is free to spend his campaign effort on focusing on DeSantis rather than focusing on Joe Biden. That's Trump's prerogative. And it's DeSantis' prerogative to sign into law bills that a supermajority of Republicans passed in his state legislature. Supermajority of Republicans that were elected by the people sent there to do a thing. So, I don't know that I would get super hung up on, is this some kind of corrupt, like, fifth dimensional chess kind of a thing? I don't know. I think it's pretty straightforward. There was a law that seemed inconvenient at the time for Republicans continuing to gain power throughout the country, and Republicans got rid of it. So often there are laws that are seemingly targeted just at Republicans, and Republicans will sit there and look at it and say, well, even though it's specifically targeting us, it would be unfair to repeal it. So we're just going to leave it there because we don't want to be authoritarian statists. This is a rare example of Republicans having power and using power to benefit Republicans. That's extremely, extremely rare. And because it's so rare, maybe that's why it's sitting a little odd in your stomach if you're looking at this and saying, is there an ulterior motive here? No, I think this is just Republicans doing what we've wanted them to do for a long time. It's just odd to see them finally do it.
Yeah. So we have another interesting story out of Florida. So Florida, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Florida is suing the federal government for providing free crack pipe and smoking kits.
Yeah, but Joe Biden, he assured us that they were not using taxpayer dollars to give people crack pipes.
He definitely said those words. So Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody is suing the Biden administration for failing to provide evidence that taxpayer dollars are not being used to purchase crack pipes for drug addicts. In the lawsuit filed on last Wednesday, Moody asked a federal court to compel the Justice Department and Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, to comply with outstanding Freedom of Information Act's request for documentation related to possible federal grant funds used to promote drug use through safe smoking kits. The fact that they're saying safe smoking kits knows that they're already aware of the money that was provided to, and explicitly to what organization it was provided to, because that is what they were saying that they were funding. Some of these kits reportedly included crack pipes. That's what was included in the kits. Crack pipes. And other drug-related paraphernalia. That's exactly what the kits were meant for. They were safe smoking kits for illegal drugs.
And they reportedly had tools in there to smoke safely.
Yes.
Also known as drug-related paraphernalia.
Yes, and what kind of thing were they smoking? It wasn't tobacco. It was crack. They were smoking, giving him kits for smoking crack. So the Biden admin had already admitted to funding a charity that provided these safe smoking kits. When you go to the website for the charity to explain what is included in those kits, they very clearly show that they are given the crack pipes and paraphernalia for smoking crack. And their stated goal for what the kits are meant for was to move people from doing the more dangerous injection of heroin, also more expensive for the manufacturer, to moving people towards who are already addicts of heroin to being instead also addicts of crack cocaine.
Yeah, that was actually a really long form segment that we did about a year, maybe a year and a half ago.
We proved it, all right?
Yeah, we everybody was talking about these crack pipe kits, and we actually had the only outlet that I could find that was actually reporting on this did a deep dive into the actual organization that was receiving the tax dollars, and that's where I discovered this the slogan of Pin to Pipe, which is a slogan of the nonprofit charity that Joe Biden was giving money to, that the HHS had selected as this was their nonprofit they were going to give your taxpayer money to. And this nonprofit had the specific slogan of Pin to Pipe, which was the express purpose is to get people who are currently using heroin in an injectable pin form, using the needle, getting them over to smoking crack with a pipe, because presumably that is safer. However, in their literature that we read through, again, we did this very long, I probably did like an hour and a half on this. Their literature does not talk about getting people off of heroin. It just talks about also adding crack smoking to their regimen. And so this specifically was targeting people who already use heroin in injectable form and recruiting them to also smoke crack, which is, I don't know. It's kind of like a suicide prevention hotline. Who, you know, when you're trying to use a rope to hang yourself, they're suggesting, hey, maybe you should try to use a gun instead. Not actually solving the problem, just suggesting an alternative way of doing it.
Yeah, in fact, just because you gave someone the ability to smoke crack doesn't mean they stop wanting heroin. You just got them on crack and heroin now.
Yes. Yeah, and we could probably talk about this for another hour, but
no, we don't need to.
Yeah, but like I said, we did do a very long form dig down on this probably about a year and a half ago when the story was first breaking.
Yeah, so Triumvirate, do you like funding drug usage, crack cocaine? You like funding that? Too bad, you already are. Okay, we also have the anti-grooming law. Tell me about that.
Anti-grooming law. Oh, no. All right, let's see here. So we have from the AP. Gay Pride Parade was canceled after anti-drag show law passes. So officials in Florida City have... In a Florida city. I was like, Florida's not a city? That's weird. Okay, officials in a Florida city have canceled a gay pride parade and restricted other pride events to people 21 years and older in anticipation of Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signing a bill meant to keep children out of drag shows. That seems unrelated. Why would they cancel pride parades after DeSantis said you can't have kids at drag shows? The Pride Alliance of the Treasure Coast posted Wednesday on Facebook that the decision to change this Saturday's Pride Fest events was made after multiple conversations with Port St. Lucie officials. The city is located about 110 miles north of Miami. Quote, we hope that everyone understands that this is definitely not what we wanted at all, and we are working with the city to assure our safety as well as produce a positive event, the Post said. So this is so weird where it's like, oh, you know, DeSantis says, hey, you can't have kids at, you know, drag, which are basically like striptease shows. And then all of a sudden you have these gay pride activists saying, oh, well, you know, that we gotta cancel the event because our safety, you know, not having children look at men stripping, that's affecting our safety.
It sounds like they very much intend, or that they believe, that a cornerstone of pride parades is doing sexual performances in front of children.
It's almost like that. The Florida House sent DeSantis a bill on Wednesday that bans children from adult performances, a proposal amid the governor's opposition to drag shows. The legislation, which awaits the governor's signature, would allow the state to revoke the food and beverage licenses of businesses that admit children to adult performances. I think the bill should probably just reiterate that if you're a owner that allows this to happen in your establishment, then you're guilty of, pedophilia, and that you should be arrested and sent to prison.
Lewd and lascivious acts in front of a child is actually the law that he's breaking.
The DeSantis administration has moved to pull the liquor license of a Miami hotel that hosted a Christmas drag show, alleging children were present during lewd displays. That was not alleging. There was video of it happening. Like that's not an allegation. It's just evidence.
It literally happened.
And so you might be wondering why, how is canceling a pride parade? You're probably not wondering why, but people who are not giving, people are trying to be stupid about it. They might be wondering why is the pride parade being canceled? Because children are not allowed to attend drag shows. What's the relationship there? And you can see here. I just did this morning. Just Google nudity at Pride, and these are the first 5 results. Why are there so many naked people at Pride? Keep Pride nude. The right to bear all. Should nudity be allowed at Pride? Nudity, kink, and safe spaces for kids can coexist.
No.
Why is there so much routine nudity at gay pride parades? So, while there's still discussion about whether or not there should be nudity at Pride, it sounds like while that is still up in the air, up for debate, then that you can't have the discussion about whether or not Pride is appropriate for kids while you're still discussing whether or not it's appropriate to be naked at Pride. And that first one needs to be resolved completely before you can even start discussing whether or not you can have kids. Because in any other context where it's like, well, I don't know if there should be, there won't be adult nudity at this place, you need to have that settled before you're taking your kids to it. It's not like worth the risk, or the risk should not be allowed.
So what would have been easier for the Pride Parade planners? They said you can't have, you'll get prosecuted if you have these nude performances in front of kids, and they're like, well, our 2 options are, we definitely want to keep the nudity, so we're just going to cancel the Pride Parade, or we could just not allow nudity and still do the Pride Parade. And they're like, well, you know what? Nudity is so important to us. Nudity in front of kids is a cornerstone of our movement. We have to allow it, so we definitely can't do the parade.
Yeah, and I don't know. This is a long-term result of a failure by just following the law. I don't think that it's the general gay population's fault that this is happening. I think that this is the fault of the cops being too scared to do something about it. There's really no reason why this should be happening. Why should there be public nudity when there's a law against it? Why should there be children at striptease shows when there's laws against it? And now this has become this public conversation when it's already a law, and all we need for is the cops to just enforce the existing law, and the DAs to allow the cops to enforce the existing law. Like that's where the problem is. Like, this would not be an issue if you just got arrested. Like, if over the last 10 years we had been arresting people, if we had been arresting parents who take their children to striptease shows, if we had been arresting bar owners that allow child drag stars like Desmond, at 8 to strip tease for adult men, if we had been arresting them for that, if we had been arresting people who are being lewd and lascivious out in public, that wouldn't have been, this wouldn't have become such a problem. Like, this isn't a problem of the slippery slope. It's the problem of not enforcing the law. There are laws already on the book. Just enforce them. That's all that needs to happen.
And this is the core problem behind all of the problems in Democrat cities, like all the crime. It's because they've been allowing it.
It's kind of stupid that DeSantis is almost playing into it, or at least the Florida legislature is, where there are passing new laws because, well, the existing laws aren't being enforced, so we have to pass a new law, and then we'll enforce that law. Well, why? What makes you think that law is going to get enforced either? You don't need more laws. Like, the existing laws on the books seem like they're enough. It's just they're not being enforced, and they haven't been enforced in a really long time.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So next story?
Yes.
Okay.
The AI's version of Dr. Fauci as a angel of death. That is what happened here. So, Dyer, did you know that Dr. Fauci and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, did you know that they never were in favor of lockdowns or vaccine mandates?
Well, I mean, that seems contrary to my entire memory of the last couple of years. But
yeah, I bet you think that we've always been at war with East Asia too. So.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I think we all remember perhaps a different past. But Fauci and Trudeau this week both came out to say that they were not in favor of lockdowns.
Why did Trudeau put truck drivers in jail and close their accounts and shit?
That's very. I think you're misremembering that. That's actually disinformation.
Didn't Fauci advise that people who stayed open should, be arrested?
Well, let's hear what he has to say about that, because he did do that. Let's see what he has to say about that.
Just basically looking back at not just how you handled it, how the U.S. handled it overall. You talked about being perceived as kind of the personification of restrictions. And you had this quote that stood out to me. You said, "Show me a school that I shut down. Show me a factory that I shut down." Never. I never did. I gave a public health recommendation that echoed the CDC's recommendation, and people made a decision based on that. Now, I don't have to tell you that people who have criticized your response have seized on that comment in particular to say, yeah, you weren't directly responsible for Prattville Elementary School closing or whatnot, but because of the recommendations that came from you and other top public health officials, those are decisions that you saw school administrators make, governors make, and you understand the influence that your recommendations had on decisions like that, right?
Well, that's true, Caitlin, but the point that I made in my response to the reporter in the New York Times article was that what it is that there was a personification of me as a person who essentially closed everything down. Those were public health recommendations that came from the CDC, and I have always been very supportive of the CDC because they base their recommendations purely on public health issues. And the point that I made, that as public health officials,
pause that. So remember when he said, it's not me you're arguing with, you're arguing with the science.
I got that. Just wait a second.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Just wait a second.
Responsibility to give the public health perspective to it. The decision of how that balances with other considerations really comes from other authorities, from authorities who have things other than just the public health to be concerned about, economic and other considerations. So that's the point I was making. I was not trying to shun away from responsibility. We made a public health...
I'm not trying to shun away from responsibility. I'm just telling you, I'm not responsible. It wasn't my fault. So basically saying, well, I'm Fauci. I'm not the one I didn't shut anything down. That was all you stupid sheep, you stupid idiots. You listened to my recommendations. I was just making recommendations. You stupid idiots are the ones who followed the recommendations. So don't blame me for the lockdowns. Blame yourself. Blame yourself over there. So
yeah, he's saying that he doesn't actually think for himself or use the science to determine what is real and what is false. He just goes by whatever he's told by the CDC. He's just a follower, right?
Yeah, I mean it's really it's like almost worse than the Nazis of like, oh, I was just following orders. It's like, oh well, I was just giving orders. I didn't actually gas the Jews or turn the ovens on. I just gave the orders to. It's not my fault it happened.
And that order came from above me, so I was just following the order to give the order.
Yeah, come on. So, as you were saying there, Dyer, there was Fauci took issue with saying that he was the personification of the lockdowns, and I picked up on that word quite a bit, as you just did, Dyer, because Dr. Fauci, he's self-proclaiming not to be the personification of the lockdowns. But here was Fauci in the heat of the lockdowns. Here's what he had to say.
There's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, there's a face, there's a voice you can recognize, you see him on television. So it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science. because I represent science.
In the name.
So Fauci's the one who self-appointed himself as the vicar of science, the avatar of science, the personification of science. And he doesn't want to be. Now he does. At that time, it was popular for him to be the personification of science. He self-appointed himself the personification of science. And now he's saying, well, I'm not don't make me the personification of the lockdowns. I'm the personification of science. I can't be both.
He loved the praise that he was getting when he was seen as being so smart and the personification of science and so wise. He was getting so much praise from the left, honestly, kind of deifying him. And he liked, I think, that he's kind of playing into the fact that he is so wise and smart. So he was giving out these guidance like, this is from me, this is what you should be doing, this is what the policy should be. And now that it's become unpopular, like, well, no, I was following the guidance that someone else told me to do. I didn't really think about it myself. I didn't do any judgment on my own. I had no agency in this. I wasn't giving advice that was going to lead to suffering and the loss of jobs and the death of people. It's not my fault. I was just doing with the CDC. They actually did the research, not me. So now he's giving up the idea that he was some wise person, a wise scientist who knew all the information. It was just super smart. Like he used to play into that fact that people saw him that way.
Yes. And then we had this week as well, Mr. Justin Trudeau over here, up in America's hat, up in Canada. And here's what he had to say this week about vaccine mandates.
My responsibility was to keep as many Canadians alive as possible. And all of the scientists and the medical experts and the researchers, not just in Canada, but around the world, understood that vaccination was going to be the way through this. And therefore, while not forcing anyone to get vaccinated, I chose to make sure that all the incentives and all the protections were there to encourage Canadians to get vaccinated.
He didn't force anybody to get vaccinated. He just made sure all of the incentives were there, like the incentive of being able to cross the border, being able to leave your house, being able to buy groceries, being able to drive your truck, being able to not be in jail. He was just making incentives. There was no mandates. He didn't mandate that anybody
get vaccinated. Incentives included you losing your job if you didn't get vaccinated.
Yes.
You losing your livelihood, not be able to feed yourself or your family. You not be able to travel. You being a prisoner in your own home if you don't get vaccinated. Those are the incentives he's talking about.
What do you think is this pivot here, where now we've got this pretty dramatic pivot of not wanting to be perceived, of rewriting history as to who was responsible for the mandates and the lockdowns? Why do you think that there's a sudden pivot from the ones that were responsible?
Because there's a hell of a lot of focus on trying to find the scapegoat right now, the person who's at fault. We have the hearings in Congress where there's a lot of information coming out about exactly how wrong the research was, exactly how guilty the U.S. government was and the Chinese government were in producing that drug, and how Fauci and other government officials were directly responsible for creating what is essentially a bioweapon and then covering it up.
Yeah, so you've got the combination of more information coming out about what were the origins and the likely suspected origin of it being probably funded by Fauci. Using your taxpayer dollars. And then in response to that, a vaccine using a new technology that had not been proven with large population samples over a long period of time, with more and more details coming out, more and more research coming out that maybe that was problematic. Maybe there were some issues with that. A lot of new heart attacks and stroke victims this year. And you're starting to see this change, because I'm guessing that there's more information that's to come. Probably more information that people like Fauci and Trudeau already have, pre-screen knowledge of. And they're seeing these things come down the track here, and they're wanting to get out of the way before it arrives.
We're over a year now down the stream from the be able to gather information on adverse effects. That information is growing.
Yes. We had this kind of coincides with a trend that started at the beginning of the year. There was that article that we covered called we should give amnesty to people who wanted lockdowns and mask mandates. Saying that, at the time we didn't know and nobody was right or wrong. And so people who were for all these things that are now proven to not work, like the masks, we need to just give them amnesty. I know that they were trying to shut down your business and burn your car and
But there's one problem with that, Fox, because the thing is, the people like Fauci and Trudeau here, they were enforcing those things when they knew that they didn't work. Because the government officials that were enforcing them often were not following them themselves. We have a heap of evidence that Fauci, that was suggesting all things, knew that they were not effectual. They were, and they also it's one thing to have a disaster, a new disaster, a pandemic, and be in the fog of war, make poor decisions, right? But it's even worse when we find out that for you there was no fog of war. You actually were clear-sighted because you knew about this ahead of time. You actually knew that the mask didn't work and the 6 feet separation didn't work. You already knew, and on top of that, you helped create the thing and had a detailed knowledge of the virus and how it was created and told no one. That's even worse. So no, you can't claim, we just made mistakes. We didn't know. We were like you. We were also confused. No. You knew and you hid it from us. And then you lied to us. You made the thing and covered up and then put us through additional suffering just to feel powerful and just to cover up your mistake.
Yep. Alrighty, so they're trying to pivot. They're trying to rewrite history. Don't forget, never forget.
Yep.
Okay. So our next story here is so the walls are closing in on Biden, but that's okay. Just make the walls disappear.
Oh no.
Oh no. Alrighty, so there's a couple of whistleblowers working on the Biden family right now. One of them is with the IRS. I thought the story might be about him, but this is not about the IRS whistleblower. He's still in play. This is a different whistleblower who was planning on coming after the Bidens, and he is gone. We don't know where. He's in an undefined location. He has not made contact with the outside world. Nobody knows where he's at. He is gone.
He may have gotten Hillaried.
He may have gotten Hillaried. Okay, so Dr. Gal Luft, the co-director of the Washington-based Institute for the Analysis of Global Security, was preparing to reveal explosive information about the Biden family international corruption scandal. Now, he has suddenly gone missing under mysterious circumstances after a Larnaca court had released him on bail. CryPilot website Philene reported on Wednesday. Let's hear. So one of the issues here is, so this is hard to source. I was trying to find any kind of mainstream source for this. There's none. The mainstream media wants nothing to do with this story. There's a lot of international not English language sites talking about this. There's a lot of Israeli sites talking about this. No American Western news site is talking about this. So that's why some of these sources don't necessarily sound familiar. Luft was an advisor to the CEFC, China Energy, which paid Hunter around $5 million in 2017 alone. Luft said that he was arrested on a bogus weapons trafficking charge in January, claiming that it was an attempt to silence him. Here's more context from an article from the Jerusalem Post. Israeli professor Gal Luft, who is wanted by U.S. authorities for arms dealing, has gone missing in Cyprus after a Larnaca court had released him on bail. CryPilot website Philene News reported on Wednesday. Luft had been arrested at Larnaca International Airport in southern Cyprus after Interpol issued an arrest warrant against him on suspicion of arms trafficking to Libya and China. He was then slated for extradition to the United States. On March 28th, Luft did not appear at the Paphos police station as required. On the same day, his lawyer declared Luft a missing person and expressed concern for his client's life. The lawyer doesn't even know where he's at.
Oh, my God.
Luft's abandoned vehicle was discovered a day later, according to Philly News sources. Crypilot police are, or Crypriot, Cypret? Is that supposed to be like Cyprus, but like Cyprusian or something? I don't know. The police are considering the possibility that Luft had left the country entirely or was taken from the country. Quote, this is one of his last tweets, and his Twitter is still live, by the way, which is a little I don't know. It's interesting. One of his last tweets was, "I have been arrested in Cyprus on a politically motivated extradition request by the U.S. The U.S. are claiming that I'm an arms dealer. It would be funny if it weren't so tragic. I've never been an arms dealer. The DOJ is trying to bury me to protect Joe, Jim, and Hunter Biden. Shall I name names?" Luft's lawyer said that he had given the FBI information during the Trump administration on the Bidens, which he planned to submit in a letter to Congress. As you know, Congress is now open to investigations. He had also learned that someone was selling sealed U.S. law enforcement information to Chinese individuals. Dr. Luft is a whistleblower. Luft's attorney, Robert Hanoch, told the Washington Free Beacon. He asserts that the prosecutors decided against pursuing Luft's information and are instead targeting him with trumped-up and false charges. So, in the middle of... So we had at the beginning of the year, we had Republicans take over Congress. They're now open to investigations and hearings and all that sort of stuff. We have this guy who seems to have been involved in similar circles to the Biden family, now willing to talk to this new Republican Congress, and then all of a sudden U.S. law enforcement decides that he's an arms dealer, and then after that, all of a sudden, he just disappears entirely. I'm sure it's a coincidence.
I'm sure it's not.
There's probably nothing to see here.
So,
yeah, I don't know. If I was the IRS guy has been preparing to be a whistleblower for what, like 6 weeks now?
He's been requiring that there is assurances of his protection before he does.
I would say that his best protection is just going on primetime TV every night that he can, maybe even going in front of Congress and testifying in a public hearing. Like that would be the only way he would stay safe at this time. I would say being anonymous is probably his greatest threat right now.
Being overseas is the easiest way for someone to get rid of you, because they can make you disappear with some agent or special forces outside of our country, where it's a little easier to get away with it and just disappear, right? It's easier to make someone disappear. But if you are being visible and being in a known location that has far more surveillance, it'd be harder for someone to get rid of you. In which case, what the IRS whistleblower is worried about is not only the risk of someone just trying to off him. There's a lot of legal ways that they can go after you, such as having the IRS investigate you or having you investigated by local law enforcement for a crazy crime you didn't commit. There are other ways to go after you domestically that aren't assassinating you. And that he wants legal protections so he doesn't get arrested and charged for these, fake crimes.
Sounds like he's a pussy.
Probably. We're talking about pussy. Let's pull up this picture here.
No.
No,
we're not pulling that up.
That's horrible.
I'm not subjecting the audience to that.
Come on.
I can't pull it up on Skype. It pulls up the whole ribbon. You have to put it in like the slides. Alrighty, so ready for our next story here?
Yes, I'm ready.
Alrighty. Well, look at this lovely place. Is this like after like a hurricane or something? Is this like?
Oh yeah, it was a type of hurricane. It was a man-made hurricane.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. So more stores have been looted. Like looting hasn't stopped of Walmarts and other big box stores. Stores that are regularly getting looted include Walmart.
The aisle 4 being closed is like very aesthetic given the surrounding.
Yes. Macy's and Target. And Walmart, like, it's not like they're getting looted every once in a while. They're getting looted on a regular basis, and they are increasingly doing more and more damage to the buildings. Now, some of the Walmarts in Chicago were shut down last year because of the rioting then, and then the Walmarts did repairs, and they restocked, and they reopened despite all the damage. And despite being not making a profit in the last 17 years, these 4 Walmarts in Chicago have remained open because they realized they were important to the community. They reopened even after that community trashed their Walmarts and stole their products. They remained open despite that. But the looting has only gotten worse, and now Walmart in Chicago has said they're going to be closing 4 stores. That's total of 6 stores been closed in the areas where they've been getting looted. And there's also Macy's and Target are talking about closing their stores as well because of the constant looting and the police doing nothing about it. So that is not 46, that's just 6. So in one of the places where the Walmarts are closed because of damage like this is called the Little Village, I believe. Little Village near central Chicago. And what happened when Walmart said that they're going to be closing these 4 stores within 5 days, the residents of Little Village in the center of Chicago, where the looting has been happening on a regular basis and no one complained about it. In fact, they said they should defund the police. And you know what they did? They did defund the police. For millions of dollars taken out of the Chicago police budget, and the citizens said nothing. The citizens said nothing when their stores that they depend on for their food and sundries were being looted. They didn't say anything. But you know what? When that Walmart is getting closed down, now they start protesting in front of the Walmart saying, you can't take our Walmart away. They have all these sob stories about how it's going to be hard for them to find food for them and their families. It's going to be hard for them because it's a convenient pharmacy that a lot of them depend on. They're worried about the loss of jobs because these Walmarts, they employed a lot of people in this community, which, by the way, the people who are eating from these stores and employed by these stores and getting medicine from these Walmarts, they're predominantly black in this community. So these stores leaving is affecting predominantly black people. But they now protest. And they say it's so unfair that these Walmarts are closing, but they had nothing to say.
Well, Walmart deserves it, though. I mean, like as like a big corporation, I mean they've in general been supportive of BLM
absolutely.
and all this stuff. It's almost funny. Like I don't even know if like I'm sad or if it's a sad situation.
I'm not sad. I find it ironic.
Yeah, it's really at this point. I mean, like, a lot of these liberal cities, it's kind of like looking at third world countries, and a lot of times it's worse, or it's just you have people who are just constantly being their own worst enemy, and then they are reaping the benefits or lack thereof of their actions.
There's no sympathy because you could have stopped this. You voted for Lori Lightfoot. Yeah. You voted for the person who came after Lori Lightfoot, who's even worse, by the way. You have voted for people who would defund the police. You didn't defend the business, so why are you upset that they're leaving? They're saying they're not supporting the community. Let's just play the video. Let's play this first video of Lori Lightfoot blasting Walmart.
Walmart is moving out.
I thought that we were done with Lori Lightfoot. She didn't win the mayor. I thought I never would have had to see her face again. You're telling me I'm going to have to see her face again?
I'm sorry, you have to see her.
What? All right. Come on, guys. Let's do an F in chat for Dyer. Say that he failed at showing Lori Lightfoot's face. All right. Well, we'll play it. We'll play it anyways.
Walmart is moving out, closing half of its stores in Chicago, saying they haven't been profitable in 17 years and lose millions of dollars a year. Mayor Lightfoot calls the decision disappointing. In a statement released today, she wrote, in part, unceremoniously abandoning these neighborhoods will create barriers to basic needs for thousands of residents. While near-term arrangements will be made for workers, I fear that many will find that their long-term opportunities have been significantly diminished. And Southside elected officials are also responding, issuing a joint statement, and it reads in part, closing 4 stores in 5 days is unethical, especially since Walmart claims these stores have not been profitable since 2006. If Walmart cared about the community they belong to for nearly 2 decades, they would have implemented strategies to combat the rising prices, the likely root cause of their decline in earnings. The 4 stores being closed are the Chatham Supercenter Walmart and the neighborhood markets in Kenwood, Lakeview, and Little Village. Each store is slated to be closed by this Sunday.
It's funny they blamed inflation. It's not that the prices were going to do higher to the Walmart, but also inflation's a problem. Who should be talking to is Biden.
A lot of processes have kind of like self-regulatory mechanisms. So we have a situation where you have just too high of a concentration of people in these like super cities, and then for some reason they tend to elect leftists, and there's this negative feedback loop where the higher the concentration of people, the more unlivable they make it for themselves, and they then have to disperse. Is it gonna be in the short term very difficult for these people to disperse because there's no longer the resources and civil services and economic activity in the area that they're living at now? Is it going to be hard for them to disperse geographically from that? Yeah, of course it is. In the long run, is this going to be better for them and for their descendants to move to a less populated area that isn't so concentrated and creating these negative feedback loops of being super concentrated, then destroying all of the resources and services that support that high concentration? Yeah, it's going to be better in the long run for them to get out of that. So this I see as just kind of like, it's physics. It's like a ball rolling down the hill and bouncing off the wall. It is just the logical outcome of having too many people in too concentrated of an area not organizing themselves in a way that supports that high density. That all of a sudden all of the things that support them collapse because they've destroyed them, and then they have to disperse. Unfortunately, they're probably going to disperse into your community, but
it's not that you can't have a big population city if you actually enforce laws and remove the element that does this kind of damage and causes this kind of harm. Now, them saying that Walmart didn't care enough about the community really stuck to me, because Walmart has many flaws, but they chose to keep 6 total stores open in a community where they were losing for millions of dollars every year for 17 years, and they kept them open. And they didn't they could have closed 1 or 2 of them, but they just kept the other ones open. But they chose to keep them open because they wanted to support the community. And then they, even after getting looted last year, they reopened. And they were showing far more care in the community than the community was showing for them. The community wasn't protecting those stores to keep them open. They didn't care. They saw the looting of these stores as being just reparations. And if you think I'm just being hyperbolic about it, here's one of many clips of activists actually saying that.
If somebody decides to loot a Gucci or a Macy's or a Nike, because that makes sure that person eats. That makes sure that person has clothes. That's reparations. That is reparations. Anything they want to take it, because these businesses have insurance. They're going to get their money back. My people aren't getting anything.
Well, fuck you. Now you've got even less. Now you can't even loot them.
Your people who had nothing now don't have a school, don't have a job, don't have food. Congratulations.
Yes. Again, it's a self-regulating feedback mechanism where if that's the policy, it's funny because that policy was sustainable for all of a year and a half. And then the system collapsed, and now they've got nothing. And they get what they're deserving. They do deserve this. I find it kind of sad and kind of funny at the same time, kind of darkly funny. You usually see in these situations, you have a lot of elderly people in the community saying, well, now I don't know where I'm going to go to get my stuff now, and I'm on a fixed income, and I can't get my prescriptions and all this stuff. Yet they're the ones who raised the generations that are doing this. And you've got this situation where you have the elderly. I mean, we've got this all across the board in wider society too, where, in wider society, now all of a sudden you've got a lot of old people now saying, well, I don't know if Social Security is going to be there for me, and the economy, everything's inflating too fast, and I can't afford that on my fixed income. Yet they're the ones who, when they were young, they laid the foundations for these systems. When the old people who probably use this Walmart for their prescriptions, when they were young, they gave birth and raised the children that would end up looting this Walmart and causing it to go away. A lot of times, these intergenerational problems, you'll show an old person or oh man, look how sad it is. Isn't it so sad that this old person that they're suffering from this? But a lot of times they're somewhat responsible for the culture that created the problems they're suffering with currently. So I find that interesting, and it's it's a negative feedback loop where you're doing things that don't support your continued doing of it. You're keep chipping away at the foundations, and then all of a sudden it collapses. This Walmart is kind of a metaphor for the wider country and what will be the result of the wider country, where you have politicians. They're looting the country. They're stealing from the treasury and using it for the military industrial complex and pushing it into special interests and all this stuff. And that looting is only sustainable for so long. At the scale of a Walmart, it's only sustainable for a couple of years. At the scale of a country, it's sustainable for maybe 100 years. But the end result will always be the same, and that will be the collapse of the thing that you're looting.
Yeah. So Lori Lightfoot, actually now, after having defunded the Chicago police by millions and millions of dollars, and demonizing them and forcing out the conservative and smart police officers, and bringing in lots of poorly trained, desperate people who would really be willing to take that job, or maybe people who want to use it for corrupt reasons. That same Lori Lightfoot who oversaw the not allowing police to enforce the law, she now is arguing for more policing and and a crackdown on the looting. Now that she's out of office and no longer has the power to do anything about it. Here's a video of her imploring Democrats to finally crack down on crime.
As Democrats, if we do not speak the truth about violent crime in our city, we will be the worst for it. I know that there are people in my city that are wreaking havoc every day and need to be off the street. You're telling them that the criminal justice system doesn't care about victims and witnesses.
Ousted Chicago Mayor.
Okay, that's enough. Where were you when you had the power to fix that problem? You created the problem. How dare you come and say, well, we got to start taking it seriously now. Too little, too late.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the people of Chicago will probably fall for it, and they'll continue the cycle. And at a certain point, a lot of the caring that conservatives had over the past decade, a lot of that was luxurious. You were able to you had surplus resources because you had yourself and your family taken care of, and you had surplus resources to care about these liberal areas, these liberal blighted areas that were suffering under leftist policies. Well, over the last couple of years here, those leftist policies have grown and expanded so much, and their policies have affected the wider economy so poorly that now it's affecting you. Now all of a sudden the conservative movement doesn't, the individual conservative doesn't really care that Chicago is well, they're losing all their resources because they've destroyed them and they burned them to the ground themselves. They're more worried about, oh, well, because of policies like what Chicago has, because of those kinds of policies being implemented on the wider stage by Joe Biden, well, now I can't afford stuff. And now I've got to focus more on making sure that me and my family have the resources that we need to survive. And that means that I've got less time to be concerned. I've less luxury time to be concerned about how Chicago is functioning, about how Chicago isn't taking care of their crime problem. And so at the same time that Chicago now realizes they have a crime problem, they're going to get less caring about it from the wider conservative community. And you should be thinking about yourself first. You should be focusing on whether or not you and your family are secure before you're focusing on whether or not Chicago and former mayor Lori Lightfoot are secure. Because you don't have the surplus capacity to care about that anymore. And that's fine. Don't feel bad about that. And Chicago and cities like that, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with that themselves. And the likely solution to that is that they won't be able to figure it out, and they'll deserve what they get.
Yeah, very much so. All right. So Portland has also the people in charge of Portland have decided that they're going to start refunding the police.
Refund the police.
Yep, they're going to start putting money back into the police after they just finished a year ago defunding the police.
It was funny because I remember back at the beginning of the defund the police movement, there was somebody outside of New York City Hall yelling "refund the police," and everybody was trying to figure out what she was talking about, and she had just done the natural. Everybody knows what that means now, but she was kind of the first one to say it, and everybody was trying to figure out what she was talking about because they're trying to figure out, like, is she trying to get like a refund? Like, should like the police be like refunding the taxpayer? Like, is this part of the defund the police movement? And no, what she meant was the opposite of defund. Was the police need more funds. You need the police. She, in her opinion, the police were already defunded. They needed more funds. Refund them. I always remember her because she was very ahead of her time, and a lot of people spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the hell she was talking about when she first popped up. It was kind of funny.
So the Portland City Council unanimously passed a fall budget bump Wednesday that added additional $5.2 million out of the $15 million that was cut from the police last year. So, I mean, still they're $10 million down from where they were. And Portland also has Walmart's closing there. Actually, they've been closed permanently for a month now. That happened last month. They have other stores that were being looted there at closing as well. So Portland's having the same problem as Chicago, and they're now thinking, oh God, this whole not enforcing the law thing is, it encouraged more crime. Believe it or not, maybe we should stop doing that. But they're doing little too late. This adding of money to the budget is not going to solve the problem. You can't just fix the narrative about police that quickly. What they have done, though, if they really do want to start cracking down on crime now, which I don't believe they do necessarily, but if they really did have a change of heart and they wanted to start cracking down on crime, what will they have done? They will have what they've done in the last couple of years is force out all the good cops, all the conservative cops, all the cops that care about doing their job, and they'll only have the corrupt cops left. The ones that are the remaining are not going to be the good cops. All the good cops have already left Portland and Chicago.
Yep, and I don't know. Again, they'll get what they deserve.
Yep. So let's move on to we're gonna skip this next story. It's just really not worth it.
This was a kind of a I want to call it a fun story. It's definitely not a fun story. I thought it was a funny story. I was browsing the Daily Wire this morning looking for content for the show, and this was their top report. And it just it kind of made me chuckle. Probably for a dark humor reason. It's certainly not a funny story. Though I will be laughing at it because the only alternative to laughing at it is to cry. All right, so from the Daily Wire, Epstein, yes, that Epstein, scheduled meetings with the now CIA director. Oh, no.
Huh. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Newly disclosed records show that the late Jeffrey Epstein scheduled meetings with now CIA Director William Burns in the years after the wealthy and well-connected financier registered as a child sex offender, according to the report. The documents obtained by the Wall Street Journal divulged planned meetups with a number of high-profile people, some of whom acknowledged meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, but disputed or claimed a lack of memory concerning details that appeared in the documents, such as the number of meetings. Burns, the CIA director, who became President Biden's CIA director in March of 2021, had 3 meetings scheduled with Jeffrey Epstein in 2014 when Burns was Deputy Secretary of State. The document that was during the Obama administration. The documents show the report mentioned a planned lunch in August at a law firm in Washington, and 2 evening appointments in September at Epstein's townhouse in Manhattan. That Epstein townhouse thing, that was part of a lot of the wider Epstein reporting, that the townhouse was kind of the lobby to the island, that there was things that happened at the townhouse that were kind of appetizers for what would happen at the island. And so especially evening appointments at his townhouse.
Yep.
At the time, Burns was planning on leaving the government, a CIA spokesperson told the publication. 1 month later, in October of that year, Burns left the State Department to become the president of the Carnegie Foundation for International Peace think tank. What a nice name, the Foundation for International Peace. It's very nice. The CIA spokesperson said Burns recalls only being introduced to Epstein by a mutual friend and meeting briefly with Epstein one time in New York, although Epstein planned for his driver to take Burns to the airport. The CIA spokesperson said that Burns does not recall receiving a ride. I bet that he doesn't recalling a lot of rides that involve Epstein. The director did not know anything about Epstein other than that he was introduced as an expert in the financial services sector and offered general advice on transitioning to the private sector, the CIA spokesperson said. They had no relationship. So, people who have enough money to need a financial planner, especially one as notorious as Jeffrey Epstein, typically you don't just if you have a lot of wealth, you aren't just giving that to a random financial advisor. Normally,
you don't know very well.
Yeah, normally your financial advisor, if you have a lot of wealth, is somebody who you know, maybe even somebody that you have a friendly rapport with, somebody that you see as a friend. You
go on vacations with them to islands.
Maybe. Not necessarily that far, but maybe. But definitely, it's not some person that you met one time and you don't know anything about them, and you gave them all of your wealth to manage on the whim of some other acquaintance has a mutual, your Twitter mutuals, basically. That's not that dog don't hunt. No. This idea that they had no relationship and it was just, I don't know, he's just giving financial advice at his townhouse in the late evening. In 2008, after Epstein was accused of sexually abusing female minors in Florida, he reached a deal with federal prosecutors. He pled guilty to state-level prosecution charges and registered as a sex offender and served roughly 13 months in jail.
That's it?
Epstein died at the age of 66 in his New York City jail cell in 2019 after being arrested on sex trafficking charges involving young girls, who he was trafficking them to. He was trafficking them to no one. That was what was the result of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, is that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were trafficking children to no one. An awful lot of trafficking to no one. It's very interesting.
Sounds really unlikely.
The Wall Street Journal report mentioned several other people who appeared in a trove of schedules and emails, adding to a long list of Epstein's known connections, including former presidents. Among the new revelations appeared in Catherine Rumler, who the documents showed had dozens of meetings with Epstein in the years which she served as the White House counsel to Barack Obama before becoming a top lawyer at Goldman Sachs. Oh no. It's pedophiles and theater kids all the way down, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's Jesus Christ. Goldman Sachs spokesperson told the publication that Rumler had a professional relationship with Epstein in connection to her role at the law firm Latham and Watkins LLP, and did not travel with Epstein as was indicated by the records. Those records are wrong. My evidence is I'm saying that they're wrong. In the normal course, Epstein also invited her to meetings and social gatherings, introduced her to other business contacts, and made referrals, the Goldman Sachs spokesperson added. It was the same kinds of contacts and engagements she had with other contacts and clients. The report. So she seems like she was kind of using Epstein's services as well. And then, like I said, if you have a financial advisor who's managing a large sum of your wealth, you have some relationship with them, and it seems like she actually had some relationship with him.
Yeah.
The report noted that Latham and Watkins denied Epstein had been a client of the firm. I regret ever knowing Jeffrey Epstein, Rumler said. So, yeah, again, the key part of this is that the current CIA director, who formerly, it's interesting that somebody goes from a international peace think tank to the director of the CIA.
Right.
Yeah, the CIA tends to be the ones kind of poking at.
I wonder what the
peace.
requirements to get that, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. I mean, we'll let that one sit because the key part of the story is that he met with Epstein and then claims to. Well, I didn't really know him.
Not in the biblical sense.
Yeah, and actually. His kind of the way that he describes knowing Epstein seems very similar to the way that Bill Gates claims to have known Epstein, which is, very, very briefly, just acquaintances. Yeah, just a little bit. And Bill Gates's now ex-wife said, one of the reasons why she's now his ex-wife is because it wasn't just a little bit that he knew Epstein. It was a lot of it. And I'm guessing it's probably the same thing for this Burns guy. But yeah, I don't know. That seems, I wonder when did, okay. So it was in 2021, he became the CIA director. But he was definitely like, he was what? He was like the Secretary of State or something. Or no, not the Secretary of State. He was something at the State Department before that. And so I don't know. It seems interesting that you have people who are associated with the intelligence kind of network, the intelligence state, and they have a lot of involvement with Epstein, and then Epstein mysteriously disappears, and then suddenly they get to be the director of the CIA.
There's way too many people in government who are probably pedophiles.
Yeah. that's that. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it says that Burns met up with him in 2014, which was a full 5 years after Jeffrey Epstein was already prosecuted the first time for being a
yeah, it's not like he didn't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Man. So, yeah, I don't know. That was
choosing to be around someone who is a prolific pedophile and also is getting other people, involved as well. I mean,
yeah. Epstein might be dead, but his connections are not.
Right.
Yeah, this guy needs some Rogaine. Look at that dandruff on his collar there. That's pretty bad. Pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Maybe cocaine.
Worst thing he's done though.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, is that the show, Dyer?
I think that's the show. Well, I think it was good. I mean, it was short. It was early.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was super short, but it was the right length.
Yeah. I think it was long enough for him to feel it. Anyways, so
it's definitely.
This is the commentary they pay us for, right?
Well, not you anymore. You're now on probation because I fired you. And then they had to rehire you.
So now I gotta work for free. Can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah, I know, right? That'd be man.
Anyways, we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Trapeze signing off. Have a good week, guys. You gonna say Direwolf out? You gotta say you forgot how to close the show, didn't you? No, you didn't. You just said bye.
I said direwolf out.
Now you did.